Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between Iran, the United States, and Israel. Now, as we speak, the U.S. continues to position forces, i.e., ground forces. It does appear that a fairly significant capability in terms of immediate strike units of the U.S. Airborne Special Operations Command and obviously Marines and Navy SEALs as well are being positioned in and around the CENTCOM area of operations, preparing quite possibly for a fairly significant operation that could take place inside the Persian Gulf and possibly the Strait of Hormuz. Now, what I also wanted to touch on was some of the both the content that is being created on YouTube and the reporting by the left-wing mainstream media that really has a disdain for the President of the United States. Now, specifically, they were really amping up the U.S. losses in this conflict. And I created a rather humorous piece of content that I'll post later, and it's designed to be humorous, and you'll have to check it out and tell me what you think. Anyway, but there's one specific content provider that did produced some recent content about the attack that took place against the Prince Sultan air base in Saudi Arabia, and that location is right here, I believe. Yeah, here we go. So yes, you can see from this image the U.S. aircraft are sitting on the tarmac, and yes, they are there. Do they have the ability? Does the United States have the ability to put them into hardened shelters? Aircraft of this size, it's kind of difficult to do. You can do that with smaller multi-role, high-performance fighter aircraft. A little more difficult. There's probably better ways to disperse these aircraft to prevent the strikes that we observed recently with the Iranian ballistic missiles hitting this air base, and what we believe between 4 and 5 KC-135 Stratotankers, that's this aircraft here, were hit and or destroyed. We also believe that a AWACS aircraft was also hit and destroyed. We can absolutely confirm that by visual photograph. And then approximately 1 to 2 of the C-130 Compass Call aircraft were hit and damaged, possibly to the point of no repair. Now, what's interesting in this content that was published, and especially some other news reporting, would indicate that there is only a few of these aircraft in service, which is true. There is only a few of these aircraft in service, specifically the C-130 Compass Call. This aircraft is really designed, it takes off, it has a standoff capability in which it suppresses and locates enemy air defense systems. This is what this aircraft does. It's part of the whole package of U.S. suppression of enemy air defenses. It is a crucial component of what the U.S. does and how the U.S. operates against adversarial nation states, such as what's happening right now. Now, what the media and other content creators fail to say is, yes, these two were damaged, and is it possible the U.S. only has approximately 3 in active duty service? That would mean that one Compass Call of the C-130 variant would be available to be deployed where as needed. What they didn't tell you is as following. This aircraft is a very old aircraft, developed in the early 1980s and then started to produce around 1983, 84 is when they really started to first come online. Okay, so these aircraft have been around well over 30 years operating. The U.S. has developed and is now utilizing a replacement for this aircraft. So look, in the 1980s, you needed a large C-130 type aircraft to operate these systems that were placed on this aircraft. Now, this is what has taken the place of the C-130 variant of the Compass Call. Again, where you needed an aircraft that had, let's just hypothetically say, 5 crew members on board, you can do that with essentially 1 or 2. The miniaturization that has taken place and the advancement of technology has led to this aircraft. This aircraft is now being used. Now, do they have a lot of them? No, not really. I believe there are about 10 that are slated to be produced, and they have 5 operational right now. These are more advanced variations of that C-130 Compass Call. So that's the other side of the coin that they are not telling you. Yes, those aircraft were damaged and or destroyed, but there's additional capability. I tell you, unless you've actually served in the U.S. military, it's really hard to get your head around scale. The scale of the U.S. military and the capability of the U.S. military. It's really hard to do unless you've kind of been there and you understand some of that capability. Now, what other aircraft were hit? Well, the KC-135 was hit. This is the KC-135 Stratotanker. Yes, 4, maybe 5 were damaged and or possibly destroyed on the ground at that Prince Sultan Air Base. Now look, if this was a European nation state, let's say this was France or Germany or the United Kingdom, and an adversarial nation state had taken out 4 or 5 of these Stratotankers that maybe or maybe not these nation states actually utilize. By and large, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the largest component that NATO relies upon in terms of the United States, in terms of U.S. capability, besides surveillance capability, is its fleet of both transport aircraft and airborne refueling tankers, such as you see right here with this F-15 being refueled. We also do the same with European nation states, NATO nation states, NATO partner states, allied nation states. We refuel their aircraft. So yes, 4 aircraft of this type were taken out of service. You want to take a wild guess at how many of these aircraft the U.S. has? Well, the KC-135 Stratotanker, we have about, the United States has about 350 aircraft of just this type. That's not even talking about other aircraft that the newer Pegasus that's coming into service. This aircraft here, this big old bird. This is the replacement, right? The United States has already produced over 100 of these aircraft. So 350 plus 100 plus C-130s, which are also used in other aircraft as well that the Navy uses. You're looking at well over 600 large Stratotanker, airborne large tanker type aircraft. It's just an incredibly large capability. And you would think that the the few aircraft that were damaged or destroyed at Prince Sultan would be the end of the world, right? I mean, yes, it's not good that the Iranian missiles were able to get through the air defense capability at Prince Sultan. It did. It's going to happen. It's war. The adversarial is playing to win, as is the United States. So things are going to happen. They're going to take some casualties, but in the grand scope of this conflict, in terms of the hoopla that was going kind of into this conflict, even predating the 12-Day War, there were a lot of folks believing that U.S. losses in terms of aircraft were just going to be horrendous. And that was predicated upon the idea that the Chinese and the Russians were helping the Iranians out. I tell you, the one thing that has been learned from this Ukrainian conflict, this has given the United States incredible insight into Russian air defense capability. Now look, the Russians have learned a lot about NATO capability as well. The Russians are learning a lot, and the Russians are absolutely adapting to this type of warfare they're facing in terms of what NATO, in terms of capability, is helping with the Ukrainians. There's a lot that the United States is giving to the Ukrainians. There is. Believe it or not, there is capability that would significantly, yeah, I said significant, again, help the Ukrainians out quite a bit. And the United States is not giving it to them. Not going to happen. And the U.S. is keeping that capability very close to the vest, very tight. The U.S. is not going to use that capability unless we enter a true near-peer conflict where the United States is actively involved. Now, God forbid that happens. Don't want to see that happen. Is it going to happen? Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, it's just what we do. I've talked about this before, that eventually the big guys on the block eventually come to blows. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I don't want to deviate too much into that. But the just the size and the scope of the U.S. military, and look, I get it. We're going to get folks who will harken back to Afghanistan, right? Afghanistan was a different type of conflict. The U.S. is better suited to not fighting a theocratic Stone Age adversary. The U.S. is better suited to fight a near-peer or close peer or mid-peer adversary than a theocratic Stone Age adversary. A theocratic Stone Age adversary will just not stop. And what you will have to do eventually to deal with a theocratic Stone Age adversary is utilize methods of war. And this is in response to, what about Afghanistan? Why didn't if the U.S. has all this capability, why didn't they use it in Afghanistan? Again, different type of conflict. Look, if China or even Iran would like to go back and become a Stone Age theocratic adversary, I mean, the U.S. could probably help with that. But I don't think some of these nation states that exist in some of the quality of life that they exist in now, they don't want to go that route, okay? They don't want to go that route. And what the U.S. was dealing with in Afghanistan was a bit different. And yes, absolutely, the U.S. could have dealt with that. Now, that would have been very distasteful for the rest of the world and even the citizenry of the United States. But when you're fighting a war and you want to eliminate a threat, then sometimes you have to get that draconian. And the United States existed in a space in Afghanistan where I would say both hands were tied behind the back of the U.S. warfighter. Now, if something were to have happened that would have unleashed the beast and the U.S. would have gone true draconian on Afghanistan, and believe you me, if that would have happened, and I'm talking a mass extinction event, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Is the United States, in terms of Afghanistan, saying, you know what? You are a threat to our existence, so you no longer have the right to exist. Goodbye. Yes, the U.S. could have done that. And that, when you're dealing with a theocratic Stone Age adversary, that's the route you have to go. And we didn't do it. We decided, you know what? Enjoy your theocratic Stone Age existence. And now there is essentially a quarantine zone around Afghanistan. That's what it is. Anyway, digressing here. But again, if you understood some of the capabilities and what's happening right now to the Iranian military, what is taking place day in and day out, and I imagine that there are, I don't know how difficult it is for the average Iranian to watch this program, but especially if you're in the Iranian military, you understand what is happening right now. And it's very easy for people in the comfort of their home that have this anti-U.S. ideology. And was that ideology created by the United States in some cases? Yeah, absolutely. Right? But this is humanity. I mean, there's been large hegemonic empires and quasi-empires throughout human history. And I've talked about that before, and just the United States is another iteration of what we have seen in the past. And that's what you're watching right now. Yes, obviously, the persons that are on the other side of the coin that oppose that quasi-hegemonic empire are not at times going to be in a good space. I mean, that's kind of what you're seeing right now. But again, Iran, the Iranian military, I promise you, is experiencing something right now that is absolutely catastrophic and devastating. What the United States is experiencing right now is annoyance at best. It is annoyance. And lack of preparation. Now, the pieces are, I've talked about this before, the pieces are being moved into place to address some of those contingency plans that were created but not acted upon at the onset of this conflict. Now, depending on what's said tonight by the president and kind of where the U.S. is going, it's quite possible we could see two things happen. We could see the United States declare victory, and yes, will it be a true victory? I mean, at this point, they've targeted so many target sets that it's going to be very, very difficult for the Iranians to rebuild. Kind of the next step in terms of what the U.S. could do is destroy the Iranian capacity to provide power to the homes of its citizenry and really eliminate the civilian / military infrastructure. And when I say that, again, what you're doing is you're creating an environment where the adversary understands it has been beaten, and it will continue to be beaten upon until it stops, until it capitulates. That's what the doctrine is right now. Another possibility, again, is the deployment of U.S. troops to seize some of these islands in the Persian Gulf. It will make a statement. It'll both give a capability statement and a general statement to the Iranians in terms of loss. You're losing this now. And it's very important to understand that in the CENTCOM area of operations, you cannot be portrayed as weak. The ideology in the culture that exists in the CENTCOM area of operation requires an iron hand. It does. Now, you possibly, as an uninformed urbanite sitting in your apartment in San Francisco or Austin, Texas, you don't understand this. And you're disconnected and you have no concept of what exists outside of this bubble of safety that is provided to you. And anyway, I'm not going to get too far into that as well. But again, that's kind of where we're at right now. Has the Iranian ballistic missile capability been annoying? Yes, it has. Has it interfered with U.S. military operations? No, it hasn't. We can chalk it up to it's war. You're going to take casualties in war. But I would imagine, well, I don't want to imagine, I know that the U.S. had been prepared for higher losses, both equipment and in personnel. And right now, we are really below where we thought this could actually go. But again, with the whole thing with the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, that should have been planned out better, and additional capacity should have been moved into the region prior to kickoff of epic fury. All right, that does it for today, guys. Have a good day.